to the Run the World podcast.
Woo!
Episode 4.
Episode 4. We changed our name from Ready Running to the Run the World podcast.
And we're going to explain why. But this is kind of fun for us. This is the first episode that we're shooting since we released the YouTube channel. So in general, we're trying to film a lot of these in advance so that we can get this content out to you guys consistently every week. It's going to drop every Wednesday morning. So you can count on it for the foreseeable future until we say otherwise. And in order to do that, we record a lot of these in advance. So
yeah, we had a lot of technical issues starting off, so I am very glad that we did that because we just had a lot of problems with the cameras and then trying to upload it and figuring all of that out. So we're glad that we uploaded a few in advance so we can get all the things kind of shaken out before we really start with this podcast.
Exactly. So we're going to share some fun things tonight. We have a few bullet points to talk over. We're going to talk about the name change really briefly, but it's important to know because that's going to be what it is from here on out. Then we're going to talk about some updates about our running and our lifting, exciting news. And then we're going to hear from you. That's right. Because we say drop questions in the comments and we'll answer them. We're going to make good on that promise as best as we can until we get maybe inundated with comments. But for now, we have a small enough platform where we can actually answer your questions. So some of you have asked some really good ones, and we're going to talk about a few tonight.
Yeah, some really good training topics, so we're pumped for that. But talking about the name change, so we changed it from Ready Running to Run the World podcast, and it's for a couple of reasons. The first one probably, my handle on social media has always been Rach Runs World, and so I don't know, it just kind of holds a place for me, it has some meaning just because that's what it's been for me since college. But also the reason why I set it as that in the first place is because I do get to run all over the world, and so it's super fun. And Drew also wants to do all of the world major marathons, and so he is wanting to run the world as well. So that's part of it.
Yeah, and it's just kind of it goes both ways. It's we're running the world, and then it's we're running the world.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're in control of your fitness, in control of your life, of yourself, it feels like you're on top of the world. It feels like you're running the world. So it's kind of it works on multiple levels.
Yeah, exactly. So be in charge of your own fitness and your future and run the world with us.
Yeah, pretty much. Sounds like we're in a dictatorship now, but we're not.
Yeah, not at all, but yeah.
Anyway, some updates. So it's been a little while since we recorded episodes 1 through 3. This is episode 4 now. So, Rachel, we're going to start with you. You got to, very recently, go compete for Team USA all the way on the other side of the world in Thailand.
Yes.
Big stuff. Let's hear about how it went.
I was running the world.
You were running the world!
So, it all comes back. Yeah, so I got to go over to Thailand, which was super fun. I had never been over to Asia before, and really, before I went, if you asked me if I wanted to, if that was in the top of my places to visit, I probably would have said no, but I would definitely go back there. It was so cool being over there, and just seeing the culture, and the people were awesome there, and getting to race there was super fun too. I hadn't been on a team really since college where you score together and stuff, and so that was a really awesome experience. And I was on 2 teams. I was on the VK team, which is basically just an uphill race. So you start at the bottom of a mountain and you end at the top. And it ended in this really cool town that actually roasts coffee and grows coffee, and I loved coffee, so I definitely got a bag of beans from the top where we finished the race, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so it started down low, ended up high, and then the second race I did was the classic mountain race, and that is just a loop course, and you go up and down and that was the first race that we did, I think, was about 5 miles, and then the second one was 7 miles. So yeah, really fun races. I had a blast while I was over there, and we won gold as in the vertical race for the women, and then we won bronze in the classic mountain race. So that was really cool, and it was awesome to just be on Team USA too. Like, other teams really did amazing too. We had like a few more gold medals like individually, and like some more podium places as a team, and so yeah, it was just really cool to be able to experience that and be there and be on a great team filled with really encouraging and awesome people.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I think this brings to light some questions that are important to answer, because a lot of the running community will understand exactly what you're talking about, but the average bystander, almost like me, doesn't understand the gravitas, as it were, of worlds. So let's first talk about like the Olympic cycle, because I think that will kind of naturally tie into the trail world, because this is a lot of, even this podcast is helping kind of get the word out on running, understanding like, what does it look like? Like, when I started running, I didn't know how to qualify for Boston. I didn't know what Worlds was. I didn't know what Diamond League was. Like, there's all these things happening in running that are really exciting things, and Team USA is crushing it on a lot of different fronts.
Yeah.
So let's educate the people like me who like need to understand it. Let's start on the track side, because everyone knows the Olympics.
Yeah.
So what is the typical Olympic cycle?
Yeah, so the Olympic cycle basically is every 4 years there is an Olympics. And so we're kind of on an Olympic cycle as athletes where you're really focused on that 1 year, the Olympic year. And the other years like are definitely very important, and there's other big races around those, like Drew mentioned, Diamond Leagues and like Worlds and stuff. So basically, but the Olympics is like huge, you know, like everyone wants to be on an Olympic team. So the Olympics is every 4 years, and then Worlds is every other year. So it's like Olympics, World, and then there's an off year where there's no Worlds and no Olympics, and then there's another Worlds the next year after that, and then you go back to the Olympics the next year. So that's kind of the cycle.
Yeah, so it's always a 4-year cycle, and the Olympics is sandwiched between Worlds.
Right.
So it's like Worlds, Olympics, Worlds, off. Worlds, Olympics, Worlds, off.
Yeah.
So that's a really big deal, because I know me growing up, I was a swimmer, as you know now, and we used to watch the Summer Olympics for swimming, and then it was like, what happens for 4 years? Like, do you just not train, or you're just training only for like every 4th year?
Yeah.
But the reality is, elite level athletes are training for Worlds 3 of the 4 years, and then maybe they have that 1 year to recover and stuff, or do things that they need to take care of in their private lives.
Yeah.
But Worlds is the same people that go to the Olympics.
Yeah, basically. I mean, to make an Olympic team, you have to be in the top 3 at the Olympic trials, or at least that's how the U.S. does it. Other countries do it differently. Some countries have like a committee that decides who makes the Olympic teams for that country, but in the U.S. for track and for the marathon, we have the trials, and it's the top 3 people at the trials that make it to the Olympics or to Worlds. So, and it's basically the same people that are competing every year to go to the Olympics and to Worlds. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same level of competition.
Right.
It's still your top 3, usually speaking, against the rest of the world's best top 3.
Yeah.
Exactly like the Olympics. It's just the Olympics gets this huge, like, everyone knows the Olympics, and then people are like, what's Worlds?
Yeah, exactly. It is wild, and you've even talked about with swimming, like, Worlds is bigger than the Olympics if you're a swimmer. Like, it's more competitive.
It is, because in swimming they don't do, I don't know if they've changed since I was a kid, but they don't do the 3 cutoff. They pick the fastest swimmers in the world. So if Australia had the best 400-meter swimmers, the entire heat, all 8 swimmers would be from Australia.
Right,
Instead
where you
of
don't
like top
see
3,
that
top
in the
3.
Olympics.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So a lot of the world records back in the early 2000s were broken at Worlds. American records set, like national records broken at Worlds, because it was actually more competitive. But no one knew it was happening unless you were like a committed swimming fan.
Right, and same thing for any Olympic sport, pretty much. I think, like, think of gymnastics and swimming and track. Like, no one really knows about those unless you're in the sport and really following it, or if you're, like, I don't know, in the, like, racing those events and stuff like that. So, and same thing with, like, soccer. Like, right now, the World Cup is on, and everyone is a huge soccer fan.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
like, then the World Cup is over, and most people don't think about it until the next World Cup.
Yeah, and some of that I get. Like,
Yeah.
World Cup is really cool. The Olympics is really cool. It doesn't take away from those events. It's more just like, if you like watching that high level competition, you want to see Usain Bolt run, and you're like, that's the fastest person in the world. You can see that every year.
Yeah,
Not every
he
4
races
years.
every year.
He loses races, but he's had a great record at the Olympics.
Usually he wins.
Yeah, usually
but,
he wins.
You know.
But you could like follow along these things, and it's the same races, the same competition, the same athletes out there.
Yeah, and world records are broken even on non-Olympic years, and American records are broken even on non-Olympic years. So it's a fun way, I think, to follow the sport and know people's stories if you actually like watch like the whole cycle through and see, like, follow an athlete through like the off year and then running worlds and at the Olympics and back to worlds. So yeah, that's kind of how the cycle works. For trail running, it's a little bit different because trail running right now is not an Olympic sport. So there's no Olympics for trail running, but we have worlds every other year, and it's the same thing or similar for us. So there were qualifiers for each event, and like the person who won the race, or maybe it was top two for some races, made it on. And then they also had something for trails where you could send in a resume, and there's a committee that would choose like who would fill the rest of the spots if there wasn't like a qualifying race for it.
Yeah, which other countries, sometimes that is their only means of choosing athletes, correct?
Right, yeah.
So some don't do top three. Sometimes they're just like, we know who our best three are,
Yeah,
and we can just vote on them.
right.
So some of this is talking purely United States. Some of this is just how the world does it.
Yeah,
But I think to understand the track, more people understand the Olympics than trail running as of today, probably.
yeah.
But to understand that Worlds is like up there with the Olympics in competition and athletes goes to show how big a deal it was that you were a part of the USA team, got to win team gold at the world level.
Yeah, and it was huge. This has been something that I've been like wanting to do since, and like dreaming of since I was a kid, you know, just thinking about like being in the Olympics, or like teachers and like things like that, or people like that, people who knew that I loved running would ask me like what my goals and my dreams were, and they would always ask like, do you want to be part of the Olympics? And even now, when people find out that I'm a pro runner, one of their first questions, there's like a few questions that they ask, and one of them is like, so does that mean that you're trying to go for the Olympics and stuff? And so yeah, it's just like cool to have been a part of like the top level of my sport like that.
Yeah, super exciting, super huge. I think, like a lot of running, it's kind of lost on people what this race means over this race, because it's hard to keep track of all that. And I would say that USATF doesn't do a great job of advertising well or getting the news out. Like, if the USA in most sports won a gold medal in something, the whole world would know about it. But this is like, wait, what happened?
Yeah, that is true. It is kind of weird.
Kind of
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I'm not running trails for like the fame or anything, but I mean, it would be cool to be like recognized, you know,
Yeah.
and like just have people be like, oh yeah, like awesome, you won a gold medal, you know.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So we've got a lot of work to do in the sport still.
Yeah, it's something like I'm very grateful for the sport and like for what it has been in my life, but I think there's a place to be grateful and also like want to push the sport forward, and like room to say that we can be better.
Totally.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. I forget the name of the movie. Man, I wish I remembered it. But it's based on the story of the WTA in tennis.
Oh,
how
yeah.
it started.
Yeah, you've talked about this. Yeah.
And just, I didn't know the full background on that. There's two like professional tours for tennis. There's the ATP, which is for the men's side, and then the WTA, which is for the women's side. and they play in all like the same tournaments. So the U.S. Open or Wimbledon is for ATP and WTA, but that movie, I'll look it up in a second. But it talks about how the women, kind of like this was back in an age where it was like pretty sexist, and people weren't giving women equal opportunities in sports. But it was like a really big push forward that like some of the best women tennis players in the world kind of were like, we're going to start our own thing. It's going to be the WTA.
Yeah, they're like, forget it.
Yeah,
we're doing our own thing now.
And they grew it to the size that it is today, where now like the prize purse for the champion of the men's Wimbledon and the women's Wimbledon winner are the exact same.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of women and a lot of people in general to fight for the sport to grow it to where it is today, where it's like really respected, really well done.
Yeah, and I think like that's one of my goals as a runner, like in this sport, is I just want to push the sport forward and like be a part of like some type of change within the sport, whether that's like more people like being inspired and going for like being a professional runner and trying to do that, or like maybe I set records somewhere, like I set some school records when I was at Baylor, and like records are set to be broken, so like maybe I push the Baylor program forward so that someone else can come and do that later on. So I think just leaving an impression on the sport is something that I've wanted to do with my pro career.
100%.
Yeah.
Down it for you guys. It's called Battle of the Sexes.
Oh, okay.
And it's with Emma Stone and Steve Carell. And Steve Carell is not his typical office self.
Yeah, I was about to say, that does not sound like a role that I think that Steve Carell would play.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's the best movie of all time, but the story, like the history behind it was helpful.
It's his favorite movie.
Yeah, favorite number one. It's Billie Jean King. She did a lot for the sport.
Cool.
6.7 on IMDb. Watch it at your own risk. I don't know. But it reminds us of, what Rachel's talking about, of growing the sport, growing the recognition, because it just helps all the athletes. It helps everybody.
And the storyline is very cool. So, yeah, that's awesome. Sweet. What about you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, so I went to Worlds, and no, I didn't even get to go.
I know, we were bummed. The travel over there it takes so long to do. So it was just tough. Yeah.
So anyway, I think maybe in one of the last episodes I talked about getting injured. So I have this like rule. I was talking to someone the other day where I'm like, take a couple days. If something sad or tragic happens in your life, like be okay to be unokay or not okay. So I took a few days and just was like super upset that I was injured and really bummed. But then I was like, okay, now let's get over it and let's move on with life, because this isn't going to change anything by being sad.
Yeah.
So I just started trying to see the positive side of it. And, it took a week or two before that really clicked in. But you start to just like kind of say it to yourself. You started to believe it. You started to like live out of that and get to a healthier place. And I can honestly say now this has been one of the best blessings in disguise.
It's been amazing. You've been crushing it.
Yeah. Been crushing it. I feel amazing. So I gained probably like over 10 pounds in the last couple months. I've been really focusing in on lifting. And as you know, going for the 250 project, last week we went to Texas to see family. Shout out to the Texas family.
Yes.
And Shiloh.
And Shiloh, who we taught to throw.
Yeah,
they told us that.
Yeah, Shiloh is going to be like a professional softball player.
Yeah, probably.
But anyway, shout out to my friend Spencer, who I think we've talked about. He's awesome. We were roommates in college, doubles partners, and he's jacked now and huge. And I wanted to go to Alpha Land because it was like 4 hours from Dallas down to Houston. And I texted him and was like, hey, you want to go? And at first we were like, no, this is like an 8-hour round trip just to lift for a couple hours. But sure enough, we made it happen. It was
Drew
awesome.
was so excited about this. He was showing me like all these YouTube like tours of the like facilities and stuff and talking it up the whole time. And my family was like, why do you want to go to Alpha Land?
And I broke it down. I could give like a 15-minute TED talk on why Alpha Land is like my favorite gym ever.
Yeah, it is really cool.
I'll save you guys the time, but it's amazing. But anyway, went there, got super pumped for the lift, and I hit 255 on the bench. I previously hit 250 and 245 before that, so Now there's been a couple times where I've met half of the project's goal. So yeah, super excited, and I'm running again. The last month now I've been running in like the 25-mile-a-week range. This week of the recording of this podcast, I'll be in the 30-mile range for the first time.
Yeah.
So definitely not as fast as I was, but I feel like way stronger, and now I actually have some like potential strength and weight to lose, because I'm trying to like, strength was my weakness, and now it's my strength.
Yeah.
Ironically. So now I can afford to lose a few pounds here of strength or size, whatever I need to get the endurance back and crush it. And the goal now is to go for the 250 project at Boston in April. Wake up early. Benson said he's on board to come and lift.
Yes, okay.
We'll be the shout out to Benson and Christy. We
yeah.
are, as our friend Bo has.
Shout out to Bo.
He has deemed us the Boston 3 party.
Our friend Benson qualified last year, and we named him, or I think it was Bo.
I think it was Bo.
The Boston Bandit, and we actually have like stickers and stuff like that, like little decals. I have it on my computer, but it says like Boston Bandit on it.
Yeah, he qualified for 2 Bostons in one race.
Yeah.
So it was like a huge deal.
Yeah, he ran that fast.
Yeah. So yeah, the Boston 3 party, gonna lift that morning and then try to run a 250 at Boston. Which probably not the best course to attempt this, but we're gonna see.
Let us know if you want shirts or merch of the Boston 3 party. And the comments, let us know. We can try and make that happen.
Yeah, just say, Bo, help us.
Yes.
So, that's where I'm at, yeah.
Nice. What do you think were the keys, just like really quick, 2 or 3 things that really helped you get through your injury and stay positive?
I think to have a goal, like we talked about in previous podcasts, to still be like, okay, half of my goals now out the window, I can't progress, but I can work on what I can work on.
Yeah.
And I have control over lifting.
Yeah.
So I just like doubled down on that, and then trusted that I am fit and I can run. And even if I'm out for a few months, and even if I have to play catch up, I know long term, I'm young, I have time, I can catch back up. So just focus on what I can control and don't worry about the rest.
That's great advice for anyone. And even if you're not injured, that's great advice, because you will always have setbacks. You'll always have like workouts that don't go the way that you want to, or races that don't go the way that you want to, but control what you can control.
Yeah. Exactly. I think obviously not running and then gaining like 10 pounds helped a ton.
With the strength side, for sure.
Like that side is just like scientific, you know?
Yeah.
But I really did double down on like technique and form and types of workouts, and my workout split, and like I changed a lot of things.
Yeah.
To get there.
Yeah, he has been very consistent with like doing his PT exercises. Shout out to Wes. He gave you some awesome exercises, and you've been doing those really diligently, I feel like, in the gym. So yeah, that's another thing. Just stay consistent with what you can stay consistent with.
Yep.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. So
that sums up where we're at. So we're going to get to some training topics now.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So another shout out. We love shouting out our friends.
We do love shout outs.
This is one of our favorite parts of the podcast, and hopefully the more it grows, the more friends we'll have to shout out.
Yeah.
So this shout out comes from our boy Preston.
Woo! Shout out to Preston.
Preston is a Division I runner at the University of Tennessee. He's a beast. He was like an 800 guy. He said his coach was training him for the mile now. He's run like, he can correct me in the comments, but I think he's run like a 50 or 51.
Yeah.
In the 400. It's like 800 maybe. Or maybe it's a 151.
No, 151 in the 800. Yeah.
That's what it is. And his mile time is probably like 4:10-ish, converted from the 1500, because they don't run the mile in college. But who knows? By now he's probably sub 4 miler. This was months ago. So.
He also holds the crown for the Williams Lost Canyon Loop, which is huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
What a champ.
Yeah, there's a lot of inside stories, so just hold on tight. But we are going to pull up on our first video that we ever recorded. He commented like we assumed people would. And he asked us a few questions. So he has so many good ones, and he's someone who has a lot of experience in the running world that we're like, let's just answer these, because if he's asking this, I bet other people would want to know.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to literally just read it out.
Yeah, and also this is to show, like, really, truly, like, ask your questions in the comments, because we do love answering questions, and so, yeah, we're doing that right now.
Yeah. Had the honor to run with Preston this summer. He came and volunteered a month of his time to serve at the Young Life camp that I work at, and that's how we got to know each other. We got to run together, and it was a blast. So this is what he says. We'll cut out all of the good job, you guys are amazing stuff.
But he did say
But
that.
he did say that. He said, you're the best, you're my favorite, I look up to you, and all of that. Just kidding. He said this. He said, would love to see some content on training philosophies and opinions on that. High versus low mileage. And he said a few other things, but we're going to start there. So some training philosophies specifically on the high versus low mileage.
Yeah, training philosophies is a little bit too general to answer in one question, so we'll just focus on the mileage side of this, because that is a question that I get a lot from people, is like, what mileage should I be running?
Yeah.
And as most running questions and training questions, the answer is it depends. So we're going to break that down for you right now. So one of the things it depends on is how new you are to the sport. You don't want to just start off running and start doing like 40, 50 mile weeks. It takes time to build up to that. When you started running, were you around like 20-ish miles a week, or what was kind of your starting point?
Yeah, I went in pretty full throttle. I think it was maybe 15 to 20 the first week, and then I was in the 20 to 30 range.
Yeah. So when I started running, I was like a lot younger, and when I really started training, I was probably more in that like 15 to 20 range for the first year that I was running, or at least the first like cross country season that I was running, and that was when I was in 9th grade. So I started off pretty low mileage, and then just slowly worked up over the years. In high school, my senior year, I was running probably around 50 miles a week, and then in college, I built up to probably around like 70 to like 75 miles by the end of college, and now I'm kind of in like the 70 to 80 mile range. I've gone up to 90, I've gone up to 100 before even, so yeah, I'll hit like high mileage weeks in there, but I always like periodize my training, so I'll have like a couple weeks that are maybe higher mileage weeks, and then a week that's like a down week where I'm not doing as high of mileage. But I would always say, if you're just starting off running, start way more conservatively than you might think that you would need to. So 15 to 20 miles is a really great range to do if you're just starting off.
Yeah, especially if you're just starting off, like this is your first athletic endeavor, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like we were both college athletes, we were playing sports like forever, you know?
Yeah.
So to start, we had like something to work with, but we've had friends that have like, they're 30, 40 years old, and they're like, I'm gonna pick up running now.
Yeah.
And they might not have a lot of athletic background, but great for them. They're starting something new, they're trying something new. And maybe they start off at 5 miles that first week, and then they build up to 10. Like, you kind of have to know yourself well enough, but like Rachel said, it's better to be more conservative. It's better, I think we've said this, where it's better to be 1% under, or better to be like 10% undertrained than 1% overtrained.
Yeah,
because you're going to get burned out, you're going to get injured, and then you're not going to want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing along with that is that you can still put money in the bank endurance-wise by doing things other than running. So if you are like injury prone, or you're trying to build up your mileage, but you want to have a little bit more endurance built in there, do a day of running and then a day of cross training, whether that's biking, swimming. A lot of trail runners like skinning and skiing, and so they'll do like ski workouts and stuff like that in the winter. Whatever you enjoy doing and like doing, and whatever is accessible for you, do that if you want to add in more like endurance training, but you're not quite at the like higher mileage yet.
Yeah, exactly. And you could do something like you're saying, like biking or swimming are less impact if you have like knee problems, or like go into this from scratch, because it's still going to add to your VO2 max, your cardio intake. Like, you'll be building that engine regardless of what you're doing. If you're getting out, if you're moving, if you're getting your heart rate up, and you have to like try at whatever you're doing, that's going to help you.
Yeah.
And that will translate to the running, and then you'll be able to run more, and it'll get easier, and paces that you used to think were impossible will be your new easy run.
Yeah, and that, a little bit of this goes into my next point of, so it depends on like your running age and like how new you are to running. That's partially what mileage depends on, and then it also depends on your injury risk. Because I think some people are more injury prone, and that doesn't mean that you'll always be more injury prone. It probably just means that you might have some weaknesses that you need to strengthen. And so doing some strength work with a PT, or like going and getting your form analyzed and seeing like what you can clean up there, can be a really, really helpful thing to do. And while you're doing that, just adding in that cross training and like keeping your mileage like relatively low could be a good thing for you.
Exactly. It also depends on your goals.
Yeah.
Like how fast do you want to run? Some people just want to run.
Yeah.
I was talking to my mom. Shout out to my mom. She is not athletic at all, and she would say that. But she started running, and
Yeah.
it started with walking for a minute, running for a minute, walking for 2 minutes, running for 2 minutes, and now she ran her first mile in her life at the ripe old age of 29.
Yes, 29.
She's older than me. I'm not gonna throw her under the bus, but yeah, she ran her first mile, and like that's awesome. It doesn't matter what pace she ran at. The fact that she ran it without stopping was the goal.
Yeah.
So that could be the goal, or you're trying to qualify for Boston, or a world's team, or something in between. All those things, you have to know the goal too, and that kind of connects into. He's talking about marathon builds, Preston, in this build up. So maybe we could even, unless there's something else you want to add, we could like move to traditional, like if we're trying to qualify for Boston or something big, trying to run a sub-4 marathon, what does the mileage of low versus high look like for a bigger goal?
Yeah, one more thing about the high versus low mileage, which it does tie into this marathon training topic as well, but it depends on what event you're training for. When I was running in college, we had like athletes that were doing the 800 and athletes that were doing the 10K, and you train very differently for both of those events. So with 800 meter runners, they want to keep a lot of speed in their training. So typically they don't do really high mileage, because with the higher mileage, you're building more of those slow twitch muscles. And when you're running the 800, you want more fast twitch muscles, because it's speedier. It's like around 2 minutes if you're a girl, and under that if you're a guy, and so they're just running really fast, and they need those like fast twitch fibers. They still need a little bit of endurance as well, because it is more of an endurance event than the 400 or 200 or 100. So you do definitely need some endurance, but our 800 meter runners at Baylor were probably doing like long runs that were 8 to 10 miles, while like 10K runners were doing more like 13 to like 15 miles, you know? So, and even more like if you're training for a marathon, which I wasn't doing that, no one on the team at Baylor was doing that when we were in college, but I train marathoners now, and their long runs get up to around 20 miles is what they kind of peak at, which I would not have like an 800 meter runner doing. Even if they were like a pro runner, I probably would not have them doing like 20-mile long runs. But definitely if you were a marathoner, I would have you do that.
Yeah. All of this to say, it gets complicated pretty fast.
Yeah.
And that's why having a good coach is so important, because pretty much everything we just said is like, well, that depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Like, we are all different. We all should train a little differently. There's some models that work broadly, but even in that context, it's very individualized for the person, for their goals, from their background. So
Yeah.
get a good coach.
Yeah.
Or try to find free plans online or something.
Yeah, for sure. And like going into the marathon topic, but still kind of talking about mileage, usually the marathoners that I'm coaching right now that are like adults and have families and jobs and a busy life. Typically, they're around like the 40 to 50 range for mileage. Some of them are a little bit more. I wouldn't say that many are less than 40 miles if they're training for a marathon. So that's for marathoners. But if you're doing 5Ks or 10Ks, you probably could get away with some lower mileage. But yeah, we can go into our marathon training topic too now.
Yeah, marathon. There's a lot of different versions of this, so maybe we just say what like a respectable marathon time. So let's say like 3:30 for a guy and maybe sub 4 for a girl, or maybe just we could put it into both categories.
Yeah.
Running in that range from a 3:30 to 4:30, what would that take?
Yeah.
Mileage wise.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like you probably need to be running like in that 40 to 50 mile range to be able to do that, or at least be at a place where you're doing like cross training plus like 30 miles a week. Like if you are a little bit more injury prone but you want to do a marathon, that cross training is going to be very, very important for you. But you still need to be getting in those long runs that are like 18 to 20 miles. So that's an important thing too.
Yeah. I don't have too much to add. You're right.
Yeah. Cool.
I agree.
You agree.
What's the
Awesome.
professional? Okay, let's move it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And we could go into a lot of dialogue. If any of these specific conversations you want to know more specifics, leave it in the comments. We'll address it in future episodes.
Totally.
But we're gonna kind of like we have to pick something arbitrarily.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Boston
Yeah.
because you're training a lot of athletes that are trying to qualify for Boston. You
I
trained
am.
me. to
Yeah,
Boston.
I have a few athletes I'm training for Boston right now as well.
So perfect time to talk about it.
Yeah.
The women's standard from the age of, I think 21 or 18 is like the youngest you can run the Boston Marathon,
Mhm.
and I think it's like 18 to 34
Yeah.
or 35. So we'll just go with that. That's the fastest, most competitive block, and then it slows down by 5 to 10 minutes per age group after that. So right now it can change from year to year, but right now qualifying for Boston for the men is a sub 3. You get to run under sub 3.
Yeah.
And for the women it's sub 3:30.
Yeah. So that's like a 6:51 pace for the men, and I think it's around 7:30. We could beat that.
I'll be that up while you keep talking.
Yeah, for the women, if you're trying to go sub 3:30. So basically, I think the most important thing to be doing if you're trying to hit that goal is to get used to running that pace. And I think I like to add a mix of speed and in marathon training too. So usually I'll have a week we got the feedback 8-minute mile pace for a sub 3:30 marathon. So yeah, I like to add speed into marathon training. So typically I'll have one day that's more of a speed workout day, and then one day, which is the long run day, that has more of a workout in the long run where you're trying to hit marathon pace miles. So those long runs are like the most important day of the week. That's like the A workout, so to speak. So if you have like a workout that's really important, and I call that the A workout, and a workout that's a little bit less important, but it's a supporting workout for your training, I would call that the B workout. The A workout is your long run. You want to be ready for that. You want to hit the paces and stuff. The B workout is more something like speed to make those marathon paces feel easier. So if you're trying to hit a 6:51 pace, then you would like run faster paces in your speed workout, like 6:30 pace or something, so that you can kind of build that good running economy and be more efficient while you're running faster. And if you can keep up 6:30 pace, then 6:50 pace feels a lot easier.
Totally. Makes sense. Yeah, because we've talked about this in previous episodes too, but you can't run a sub 3 hour marathon if you can't run a sub 1:30 hour half marathon. You know, it's just like mathematically impossible.
Yeah.
You have to be able to run faster at a shorter distance in order to run the marathon. And to train at paces faster than your goal marathon pace will make then your goal marathon pace that much easier. Because you're like, oh, I've run 7-8 miles 20 seconds faster than this goal pace. Now I have to run 26, which is harder,
Yeah.
but at a slower pace, which is easier.
Totally. Yeah.
So your body can adjust over time.
Yeah.
What would you suggest then, mileage-wise? What would be like a low end, to answer Preston's question, what would be like a low end that you'd be like, you could get away with it if you're really talented, and then a high end where you're like, if you're new to running, or maybe you're not naturally that good, what's like a high end recommendation?
Yeah, I think low end, I think you really need to be at least able to hit like 35 miles a week to be able to run a marathon. And that's like maybe at your peak mileage, but if you think about it this way, if you think about like you have a 20-mile long run on your peak week, then that only gives you like 15 other miles in the week to run. So you could be running 4 days a week and do a 20-mile long run, and then like 3 5-mile runs, and you could get there, and you could get to that mileage, and that would be on your peak week. So maybe you hang out around 30 miles or so, and then for a lot of your training, and then work up to that 35 miles by the end. I think at 35 miles, you probably want to have a couple cross training days in there, or at least one cross training day, and like some rest days too. I think 40 miles is like a solid point to start at for marathon training. And really, I would suggest too, if you're thinking of doing a marathon, like do a build up for a 5K or a 10K first, and then get into marathon training, because we were talking about how it's not great to just start off running and begin with 35 or 40 miles a week. So getting in a 5K or a 10K first and like building up to that, if you're like totally new to running and you're doing like couch to like 5K or 10K, or trying to do even couch to marathon, I would definitely suggest not doing couch to marathon and do like couch to 5K or 10K first and then hit marathon training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're a YouTuber trying to get views.
Yeah.
And you want to be in the hospital for a couple days.
I mean, I think we both have talked about this too. You could go out and do a marathon right now. I feel like any human could.
Yeah, it's like a mental battle.
Yeah.
But physically, you're going to hate yourself, or you're going to just run a terrible time.
Yeah, totally.
That's like below your standard of running. Like, you could be so much better.
Yeah, you could run a lot faster. So, yeah.
And safer.
Yeah, and safer too. So.
What would you say high end of mileage is?
High end of mileage, that's really tough, because there are marathoners out there that I know that are doing like 100+ mile weeks, and that's like a really high end. But I would say, like for my athletes that I'm training, that like I was talking about, they're not professional and they have like a full-time job, they have families and stuff. I would say most of those people will top out around like 70-ish miles or something like that. So, which I think is still high mileage.
Yep.
And at that point, you're doing doubles and things like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I would say as a high end for like people that have like full-time jobs and families and stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that follows most of like the people we know, at least anecdotally.
Yeah.
Like in that 35 to 75 mile range could get you to Boston. It's like pretty broad, but it goes back to everything we just talked about, where it's like, what is your running experience? Were you a D1 track star like Preston, and then you took a few years off, and now you're starting to get into Boston? I'm sure Preston could easily just like sneeze out a qualifier for Boston without running that much, because he's a beast. Yeah. But someone like myself, it took me years to qualify for Boston.
Yeah. And what mileage were you at when you qualified? I forget what mileage you were at.
I was right in that medium that we're talking about. I was like low to mid 50s.
Yeah.
So, and I would say that's like surprising. I would say that's like good.
Yeah, I think that's pretty normal. Is like people who are running around 50 miles a week or so, like have a good shot at qualifying if you're able to like run the times and the pace as well.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the key too. If it was 70 miles, but none of those miles were even 1 mile at 6:51 pace, then it's like, okay, in a year or two maybe you'll be there, but yeah, the paces also make a big difference, because even in the low 40s I was hitting 6:51s already, and I ran a sub 1:30 half before I ran 50 miles, I think. Right. So
yeah, the other
paces
thing.
make a difference.
Yeah, the other thing I would say on this is that like just because you could run 70 miles doesn't mean that you should run 70 miles, or that will be like your best shot to run your fastest, because for some people that could just be at a, like, running 70 miles could really burn them out. It can make them tired. Their legs feel flat all the time. They're not recovering from stuff. But if they pulled back and they were running more like 50 to 55 miles, even though that's less, and it sounds like, but that's easier. Like, you could be running way faster maybe on your long runs because your legs are more recovered. So higher mileage doesn't necessarily mean that you'll run way, way faster. It depends on like who you are. Like, I feel like higher mileage works well for me, and my body has like responded really well to that, but other people respond well to like sticking around that 50-mile range.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's also like, what does your activity look like or job look like too? Because you might have a job where it's like a traditional, you're sitting at a desk for a lot of hours of a day, or you might be like some of our friends who are like constantly on their feet all day. Like this summer when I was working at camp and was with Preston, that was the most amount of mileage that I had on my step counter for my Garmin in the entire year.
Yeah.
Even when I was in the middle of marathon training.
Yeah.
And I was only running like 25 miles a week. But there was all this like bonus mileage coming from my job. So you have to factor in that, like, time on feet is time on feet.
Yeah, exactly. And also, just like how time on feet is time on feet, stress is stress. And I don't think your body really knows the difference between like workout stress and like job stress or family stress. So if you have like a really, really stressful week in work or like with family things, it's okay to like not push super, super hard that week and kind of pull back on training. And with athletes, I really like to use down weeks, like how I was talking about periodizing my training, where I'll have a couple weeks that are higher mileage and like really solid training, and then a week to really like chill and recover. And I'm still running mileage and stuff, but it's not super high and it's not super intense. I would just work those down weeks into those more stressful work weeks and into the stressful like family life things, and back off when you need to. Make sure you're getting sleep, make sure you're eating enough, make sure you're recovering, you know?
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that covers most of it.
Yeah.
Great question, Preston. This brings up a lot of great things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to it. Stress is key. So he talks about high versus low mileage, marathon build. What training for trails would look like?
Good question.
If only we had a professional trail runner in the house.
Oh. Yeah, so training for trails looks a little bit different than training on the road. So trails are pretty wild. So I'm running on stuff that like people hike on. Like I started off running trails on that Appalachian Trail, like on the East Coast. I've run on parts of like the Pacific Crest Trail, and like I've run up Humphreys, which is like our mountain in Flagstaff. So it's like those kinds of trails that I'm running on. So because of that, the technique is really important for running on the trails, and you're doing a lot more than just like running flat and straight on a road. You're like looking out for rocks, you're going up mountains, you're going down mountains, you're like doing a lot of vert and things like that. So my training has differed a lot just because I'm trying to get better at like some climbing and better at like the technical stuff that goes along with the trails. So some days I go to a really technical trail for an easy run, and I just try to get better at like running that downhill and not twisting my ankles on things, which has been a problem sometimes, but I'm getting better at it, and I'm working on ankle strengthening. That's like one of my focuses for this off season. So I'm doing some of that. I'm doing a lot more hill workouts where I'm going to hills, and a lot of those workouts are similar to like speed and interval workouts that I would do on the track, but instead of a certain distance, I'm going more for like time. Like I'll do like 3-minute hill repeats where I'm like running uphill fast for like 3 minutes, and then I take a break, or jog down, and that's my recovery, and then I do it again, and it's just repeats like that. A lot of just like long climbs where they're kind of at threshold effort, and I'm just trying to like climb and work on staying in that threshold effort zone, but I'm climbing. So Yeah, those are a few things and ways that trails are different, especially different than the roads. But I will say I do like a good speed workout sometimes. So I do keep some speed in my training, and I'll like hit the roads for like a faster workout or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot different. I've tried keeping up with her, even on easy runs. It's hard. We ran Bill Williams here in Williams. We live in Williams, Arizona, near Flag, and it was one of like the hardest runs I've ever gone on. A couple of those miles had 900 feet of gain in a given mile, and I think something that, being like a beginner trail runner myself, explain to our audience the importance of not pushing on the way up, and like trusting intuitive running, if that makes sense. Because my mistake, just to like explain it, and if you've tried this, maybe you've seen this, is on the roads or on a treadmill, you kind of lock into a pace, you lock into a vibe, a feeling, and you kind of can know yourself of like, oh, I'm burning out, I should like ease off. But when you're running up a mountain, you're like gassed, and you feel like you do at the middle of like a sprint on a road equivalent, but there's like this trusting your body, knowing like, oh, actually maybe I can survive, or like maybe I can slow down a lot more than I should.
Yeah.
How's your experience with that been?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Honestly, with like VKs and stuff like that, like what I was talking about where we just run straight uphill and there's like no downhill, I really feel like I'm running an 800 for like an hour, which like
Take
sounds
that, Preston.
it sounds wild. I know that's like not physiologically possible to like run at that effort for that long, but it feels like that. Like it just burns. You're breathing like really, really hard, just for a long time. But I feel like the more I do that, it's kind of just like practice makes perfect, and you just like understand your body and understand how hard you can push on those climbs. And sometimes for me, I just like forget the pace on the watch. Like actually not sometimes, always for me. I forget the pace on the watch when I'm running on the trail, because the grade is different for different climbs. The trail is maybe more technical in one area, which makes it way slower, and not technical in another. So I use my watch. I look at like the elevation gain a lot on it, and that helps me. And it helps if I know the route that I'm running, so I know like how much farther I need to climb and stuff. But I don't necessarily look at paces.
That's key.
Yeah. So I think one of the big things for me in trail running is like knowing the course and knowing like where the uphills are, where the downhills are, where the technical parts are. If I can go and see the course before and see some of those technical parts, that's really helpful for me as well. But knowing the course is huge, so that I know, okay, I can't like give everything that I have and like be running an 800 for an hour on this like one climb if there's like 3 other climbs in the race, you know?
Totally.
Yeah. So I would just say practice makes perfect, basically.
That's a innovative thought.
Yeah. Thank you. Very new, I know.
Very new.
Yeah.
But it is true. Usually, simplicity is the answer, and simple does not mean easy.
No, not at all. My training has been very simple, I would say. It's nothing like super flashy, but it is consistent. And that's gotten me far so far, so.
Gold medalist. Final question.
Final question. This one's more for you,
This
so
one's
I'm
more for me.
excited.
Preston, why'd you have to do this? He says, will the Lost Canyon Loop ever be taken down again with one of these faces?
He hit that emoji.
Yeah, he did. So, background story. This is a good one. So the Lost Canyon Loop, I work for this ministry nonprofit called Young Life, and I also work at the camp called Lost Canyon here in Williams. And there is a Strava segment, a loop at the camp, and it's called the Lost Canyon Loop. And there is a long history. I'll try to shorten it. Our friend Benson, one of the Boston 3 Party.
Also the Boston Bandit.
Also the Boston Bandit. He, years ago, this should be a movie.
This should be a movie.
In the world.
Of bandits.
Of bandits. Benson, who works for camp also, he like became the crown winner. So Strava, if you don't know what Strava is, definitely download it. It keeps track of all your runs, and there's segments where you can have the crown. It keeps track of the top 10 fastest known times on every given segment. So this segment is like, what is it? Is it half a mile? No, it's like it's three-fourths of a mile.
Yeah,
three-quarters of a mile, and it's pretty hilly, and it's at over 7,000 feet. So it's a really hard loop, uneven terrain. It's like mostly on a road, but it's just like not a great.
It's not a fast place to run, like a 0.75. Usually, if you don't know much about altitude training, I would say for a mile, you're typically about like maybe 15 to 20 seconds faster at sea level, would you say?
At this, probably. Yeah, if you get faster, obviously those seconds would drop.
Yeah.
But yeah,
15-ish seconds faster at sea level than you would be up here. And
especially
then you
with
added
the hills
too. Yeah.
So easily. So yeah, it's brutal. Benson held it, which was awesome for years, and he was the fastest. He had the crown. Yay! It was great because he's Lost Canyon staff, and then he had the Lost Canyon Loop segment. But this guy came out of nowhere. One of the guests, because that camp has a lot of different guests from all over, really the country. And this one guy was a runner and was staying at the camp for that week, and he challenged Benson's segment and took his crown.
He crushed it. Benson's wife, Christy, has told me she like saw the guy running the loop and like looked out the window and just saw him blazing by, and she was like, oh no, like she knew.
And I don't know that guy personally. Like I've seen some of what he's done on Strava though, and he's fast. He's like a sub 110 half marathoner. Like he ran in college. He's good.
Yeah.
He's like better than average by a lot. So he sadly beat Benson's time by a lot, and Benson, being now the elite level marathoner that he is, was like, I can't run that fast in like a mile. Like his mile time isn't what he trains for, what he loves doing.
Yeah, he's an amazing marathoner.
Amazing marathoner.
He's not training for the mile anymore.
But yeah, so he was like, it's over. So that came not long before we moved into town, and I heard about that story, and I was like, I have to avenge Benson.
Get the crown.
I have to get the crown for Lost Canyon, you know, because it has to like be taken back by camp staff, or at least someone like in the Young Life world.
Now we're giving away the secret of the loop. So,
I know, so yeah. And,
now
and we're in
flag
Flagstaff.
Yeah.
Molly's gonna be there tomorrow. So anyway, I trained, and I was training for other things, but in the back of my mind, I was like, "Oh, I really want to win that loop." And his pace was like a 4:50 mile pace.
Right. I coached Drew. He was training for the loop.
The only thing. This was my goal. This was pre-250. No, so I knew like my next speed block, that was going to be like a side project of mine, which kind of back to our episode on goals and stuff. It's good to have goals that are fun. Like even if they're goofy or no one else cares, it kept me motivated and it kept me excited, and I was just having fun with it. So keep your fitness fun. You'll do it a lot longer. You'll probably be a lot better at it.
That's why Strava's fun.
That's why Strava's fun.
Download it.
Download it. You can follow us there. Our names are our names.
Yes.
Anyway, was training for it. His time was like a 4:55-ish mile pace for the 3/4 mile. And at this time, my mile PR going into that summer was a 4:59. So I was like, I don't know. But sure enough, after a lot of training, Benson and I met up with Benson that morning. He did the warm up with me. It was super epic. And I went for it and like shattered it by like 9 or 10 seconds.
It was awesome.
And I was running at like 4:43 mile pace under really hard conditions. So I was like really happy with myself. Dead exhausted. Couldn't have gone any faster. And we were all pumped. It's like, oh, it's back with Lost Canyon. We got it. Yeah, it's in our names. Blah blah blah. Well, 15 minutes of fame sunk in really fast. And literally like a month, maybe even less than a month after that, Preston showed up to camp. Again, he was like working with what's called summer staff for the month, volunteering, helping kids on bikes all month that didn't know how to ride bikes. So shout out to Preston again. He helped a lot. He's an awesome dude. But he pulled me aside. I was like kind of his pseudo boss for the month, and he's like, "Are you Drew?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're the Lost Canyon Loop guy. You're the Crown." I was like, "Is this that popular of a thing?"
Yeah.
It's like such a random thing to know about me. But I was like, "How do you know?" He's like, "I run for Tennessee." I'm like, "Oh, dang it." That was the beginning of the end. Yeah, exactly. I was like, "This is the beginning of the end." But he was like, "Yeah, I run the 800, and my coach wants me to do the mile." I'm like, "Wow, that's perfectly the distance of the segment." So he was training for it, like not really probably training that hard because he could have probably done it easily. But it took a couple weeks, and it was building up to it. And long story short, he got the segment. Well
Good
done.
job.
And he shattered it too. He beat me by like 7 or 8 seconds, running like a low 4:30 pace for it. So just like killed it, and like he could have gone faster. So he asked in that comment of like, "Will the Lost Canyon Loop ever be broken again?" And he was gonna run it a second time, but I told him, if you leave it at like a 4:30s pace, it's still dangerous. Like I still might take it from you one day. And he was like, "Sure, why not?" So he didn't go for it again. And I don't know, Preston. The short answer to the question is I don't know. I would love to work on my mile time, and I would love to break 4:30 in the full mile. So if I could do that, then I should be able to break your time. So we'll see. I might just have to break it just so that you come back to Williams so we can run again. So
Yeah. Aw.
that might be motivation enough for me.
Aw, that's sweet.
But I don't know if I will be that good, so we'll see.
Nice.
It'll
Well,
have to
now
be
we've
after
told
the-
everyone about it, so
Yeah.
maybe it will be broken by someone that's not even a Lost Canyon person.
That's true. At least it's still like Preston. He's one of us, you know.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
him taking it, I'm like, I don't need to avenge him. I had to avenge Benson because some nobody took it, but we know Preston, so
Not a nobody, but just
Nobody
a
knows.
known
We didn't
Lost
know him.
Canyon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
so
yeah. Anyway, that's
That
the
is all.
story of the Crown. That was good. I like
yeah,
it.
it was crazy. It was months, a lot of drama. It
Yeah.
been a short series.
Lots of drama. The talk of the summer, the talk of the town.
Talk of
actually.
town, yeah.
The town's not very big. It's actually very small.
It is.
There are people that ride like horses up and down the town. I've seen them in the morning when I'm going to the gym.
Yeah, there's probably about as many deer as people.
Yeah,
So.
that's true.
Cool place. But I think
Come
that's where.
visit.
Yeah, come visit. I think that's where we're gonna leave it for this episode. Again, new name. We're excited. Moving forward, we have a lot of things to cover. But within that, we love to hear from you. Anything that you want us to talk about, we would love to talk about it because realistically, if you're interested in it, I think anything that someone is interested in, it's probably wider than yourself, and it's cool to connect with other people that think the way you do or disagree. It's just like fun to get that conversation started. So we're having a
Totally.
blast with it.
Yeah, so leave your questions in the comments because as you saw here, we actually answer them. So do that, comment if you like it, then like it, subscribe, all of those things, and
It helps the YouTube algorithm.
yeah.
Just like appease the YouTube gods, make it work. The subscribe, all of the people have subscribed already. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Like,
thank you.
we've been kind of like blown away with the support already.
We've gotten great feedback.
We have
so
low
thank you.
expectations. We're doing this because we love it, and if it's benefiting you, that's kind of like the heart behind why we're doing it. So
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.